These days, everyone's getting a lot more done from home, and for music producers, that means getting the most out of your DAW software. If you're trying to recreate natural instruments, that can be really tough if you're using samples because you're missing out on those organic sounds that come from a live performer. Today, I want to talk about Reason Studio's newest device called Friktion. I created a sample, and I want to show you how this is a game changer and how it's going to help you up your own productions. Let's do it. So we're going to dive into Friktion. I'm going to show you how each of these elements gives you that organic sound. I created a sample track that I'm going to run through with you guys. I don't have a name for it, but it's dedicated to a good buddy of mine, Rob Dog, who passed away a few weeks ago. I wasn't really able to write anything or jump on a video for a few weeks, feeling unmotivated, and I kind of used this track as a way to get out some of that, some of those feelings and process that information. And this video is because I found Friktion really powerful, and at the same time, I know that he'd want me to keep doing my thing. So here we are, and I'm going to show you this awesome device by Propellerhead Reason Studios, which I used in this track. There are 10 of these devices in this track, along with a few other elements that bring it together. First things first, I'm going to play you the track. Okay guys, so I'm going to dive into how Friktion works and then explain how I put this track together. So what we're looking at right here in the center mass is bowing versus pluck. You can assess the pressure that's being applied to the bow itself, the position in which the player is holding the string versus the instrument, and the same goes for the pluck as well. Bowing being long notes like this, pluck being something more like this, obviously. Finger and collisions. So this is where the collisions, you can add a little bit more of a natural sound of when the fingers are colliding with the natural body of the instrument, and the finger as well. You can adjust the position there. Those are really nice features to customize the sound a little bit. Moving down to, let's say, string over here, you can obviously modulate the decay, the dampness, and the slope. That's cool for customization. I will go over to the harmonic side, which is really cool because when you have something, let's put this back to bowing, and you want to create that harmonic, and then you can adjust exactly what type of harmonic you're going to be hitting when you're playing live. So that is pretty handy. Now moving down to your articulation section here, this is like your attack, delay, sustain, decay type of situation, which most people are used to, but here you can control the sustain with the mod wheel like I'm doing right over here, which is real nice. And that brings me to my next point is, in order to hit to activate any of these different sections, you can use the trigger points right down here, which are keynotes on the entire MIDI keyboard, which is really nice because it gives you the ability to access those features while you're playing different notes, so you can customize it. However, it was really hard for me to access the mod wheel while I was playing these notes on my keyboard. So what I did is I added a Launchpad Mini to the situation and placed it on top of my keyboard, so I have control of hitting these trigger keys from the Launchpad, but I can also use my fingers to hit the mod wheel. I kind of just arranged it and customized it. That helped my workflow a little bit and gave me full access to everything that I had to offer. So these are all very useful features. You have LFO, mod wheel envelope, you have an EQ on there. I mean, I also do my own EQing as well, just a little bit to touch it in on their graphic EQ, but you have the option here And then moving over here to doubling, you can create, more sound out of how many people are playing this instrument directly from the device, and you can throw off the timing, so it gives it a little bit more of a natural feel. I liked that. Sounds a little more sloppy that way. And then the reverb is built-in engine as well. That's very useful, just to obviously change the type of environment. And then moving up to the resonator body, this is where the signal is passing through, and by changing the type of instrument you are trying to emulate, you can create really different, unique type of sounds and reproductions of that sound, and you can kind of go from there. So that's something definitely worth exploring as well. All of these are macro algorithms basically that are designed to increase the amount of wiggle room you have on parameters without limiting the overall structure of those sounds to be replicative of real instruments. So I know a lot of work went into all this stuff. And obviously then I use, maybe a little bit of compression here or there if I'm going to sidechain something, a little reverb and stuff like that. So here, let's see, I used the, on the cello section. And I drew this all by hand because I wanted it just to kind of feel free. So you can see the velocity, and it looks like I modded the mod wheel manually a little bit later. And I laid all this stuff out pretty quick. I didn't have a particular direction, like I said. I just knew that I wanted to layer as many things that sounded organic together to see how it all comes together. And I'll play this ARP that was created down here. Using an ARP on a string is usually pretty useful if you just want to get a really strong melodic feel of a direction you could go. And it definitely helps. And again, I wrote this all just by hand real quick, just so it sounds a little sloppy. It's not perfect. I didn't want it to be. So all together. Now, I didn't do a lot with the percussion in this track. I didn't want to add a lot with percussion. I wanted the strings to speak for themselves, but I did go to BPM Create and download a couple samples and just throw in a kick and a couple snares that I layered together and EQ'd, and with a little bit of reverb on it, just to give it a little backbone when I do enter the electronic stage, but nothing fancy there. Drew out the steps to 64 so I could just edit how my sequence was right there, so it's not just a 16 bar loop, and 32 on the snares there. So gives it a little bit of variation, but not a lot of work. Shortcut. So moving down here, I have an acid layer. This is something just to complement the bass layer that I'm going to show you later. Obviously, when you're using electronic instruments, you got to partner in with other sounds that kind of help them flow and fill different frequency ranges. So nothing really fancy to that, just a cool sound that I found to help the vibe. And down here I'll show the sub bass, which is nothing fancy. It's just a rolling bass line basically, but then side chains. It gives me that low end that I want. I didn't want to spend a lot of time building sub basses and mid basses. This was not really about that, and it does the job. So happy with that. I have a few other instruments over here, and what I'll point out is at different times I'm using the mod wheel, and other times I'm using the tremolo, which works great because you can also adjust the rate of the tremolo and automate that so you can intensify different notes that you're hitting. Altogether, this track, like I said, is about 17 channels. Nothing too fancy. It took me about a day, and then a day of just cleaning it up a little bit and EQing it. It's definitely not finished, nor will it really ever be, but it is a cool piece, an experiment for me to use Friktion, and I'm glad I did. I definitely see the potential here in terms of having so much more control over the way your instruments are sounding versus a sample, which I've always felt was so limiting. I never really enjoyed it. You can't really tone them up and down, without it sounding kind of manufactured. So here you can dive into the instrument itself, and they've done a great job. So this is definitely a win in my book. Good job, Reason Studios, on Friktion. And yeah, Guys, I hope you found that video helpful. I hope that you have learned ways to improve your workflow, maybe EQ, maybe automation, maybe it's Reason Studios, Friktion. Either way, please subscribe and hit the notifications and like so that you can keep getting this cool information that I'm going to be turning out once a week. So here we go. Thanks, guys, and see you soon.